incident that took place when I was about 4 years old and that completely affected the trajectory of my life, my career, and my life after that as an adult. I grew up in Madras, a beautiful tropical paradise in South India, and it is located on the ocean, the Bay of Bengal, and I was very fortunate in having wonderful parents. My father, Raja, was a senior airline executive, and he was in charge of the entire southern zone. And he was charismatic, he was kind, and he was humble in spite of his high profile job. He had the good looks of a movie star, and yes, he was my hero. My mother, Leela, was the queen of arts, and she was a brilliant psychologist and took great care in molding my little being. She always told me to follow my passion and to dream big and dream with such intensity that they will manifest themselves in my reality. She knew right from that age, she and I both knew that my passions were music and medicine. And she always told me, be bold enough to use your voice, be brave enough to listen to your heart, and be strong enough to lead a life that you have always imagined. So it was a hot summer afternoon in Madras, and that particular day, my parents were not at home. There were several servants inside the house, and I was playing outside in the garden with my nanny, who could be like a second mom to me. We lived in a beautiful home with a lush tropical garden, and opposite our home lived the Inspector General of Prisons. He lived in a beautiful bungalow, and he had a lovely garden, and they had very well manicured lawns, and he always had a couple of police staff patrolling the grounds. There was an inspector and there were constables, etc. So this particular afternoon as a child, I was about 4.5 years old, while I was playing in the garden, I realized that even the IG, I'm going to use that as a short term for the Inspector General, the IG and his family were not home, and only the police people were patrolling the grounds. So while I was playing, I noticed a huge black van come and stop in front of the IG's house. And several men came out of the van, and they were all dressed in some kind of a uniform. The uniform was something of a stripe. They were wearing some outfit which was having stripes. And the thing that really affected me is they were all tied together, one behind the other, with some kind of a chain or some kind of a rope. I still don't remember exactly what that was because it's a long time back. But they all got down from the bus one by one, and they all proceeded to the garden. They sat down quietly and started working in the garden. I was just noticing this. I was only a 4-year-old child, and that sight of human beings being tied to one another affected me deeply. My mother had always taught me that human beings are born free. And in a country like India, riddled with caste, creed, superstition, biases, she wanted for me to be raised with not all these prejudices within me. She taught me there's only one religion, which is love. There's only one caste, which is humanity. And there's only one language, which is the language of the heart. And so for me, when I saw these people tied together, that bothered me deeply. I know that my nanny told me, baby, they all used to call me baby as a child, and she said that these people are inmates from a prison. I don't think that affected me, or maybe I didn't even understand at that age what that meant. I observed them working really hard in the garden, and then I told my nanny, I want to go and see them closer. And she said, no, your mom is going to be very angry if you want to go closer. And I said, no, I will take the responsibility. And I told her, get a big jug of buttermilk. This is a drink that we usually have on a summer day in India. And I took the jug of buttermilk, and with her, I walked across the street into their house. The police inspector definitely knows who I am, and the little girl who lives opposite. And so he smiled at me and he said, "Baby, what do you want?" And then I told him, "I want to give all of them a glass of buttermilk." He said, "Okay." So I proceeded to give each one of these people a glass of buttermilk. And when I looked at the expression on their face after they drank that glass of buttermilk, it was sheer gratitude. I just felt something happening within me. And after I finished my work, I told them, "Okay, I'm going to go across and play in the garden." And I saw all these men lift their hands up because they were all tied like this to each other. They all lifted their hands up. They looked at me and they said, "Blessings to you, dear little girl, and you have quenched our thirst." Now, something happened to me at that moment when that blessing came along my way. And I knew with a certainty, it was almost like an epiphany. I just knew that I was going to help these unfortunate souls in some way or the other. I grew up, I got a job in Folsom Prison. And if you ask me how did I feel when I got this job, I was both excited and terrified at the same time. But I realized that if a challenge terrifies and excites you at the same time, you must accept the challenge because it's good for you. And I decided that if I need to be more alive, I have to be less afraid, and so I did it. I lost my fear and I gained my whole life. I had an amazing journey in Folsom Prison. It was spectacular, probably the most important journey I have ever undertaken in my life. It was wonderful, and I had an open and a curious mind, and I learned so much. I know that fear limits an individual, but once it's overcome, you're truly free, and this was my journey to freedom. Thank you.